International Freethinkers. You're listening to the We Are Sober podcast.
All right, we're here.
And we are live.
You're listening to the We Are
And
Secular
alive.
podcast. Are you
alive
alive?
and alive? I think so.
Okay, that's fair. That's good. Well, hello. I am alive, and this is alive, and we are live. Justin,
Jena.
where is our guest?
Oh, I don't know if Jack's gonna make it. We'll see.
Yeah.
We invited Jack Parker on, so we'll see if he shows up or not. If not, it's cool. We'll just chill and have fun. And if so,
Right.
we'll talk about some things.
Let's talk about some things. Hi, Enter. Hi, Enter. Say hi to the people. Hi, Matthew. Our voiceover. See, Enter, this is the guy. This is the guy that does the voiceover for the intros. Talk to him.
He's the voice work man.
He's the voice work man. Hi, Christine.
Christine.
And Rollin. Good to
Christine,
see
every
you.
time that I see that the Steam Deck is delayed, I think of you. And so far, it's looking like late February.
Is that an inside conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Steam Deck is a handheld gaming device like the Switch or the Vita,
Oh.
and she's been waiting for it for a long time.
Oh. That doesn't sound like something I know of. Yeah. You're the big voice guy.
Well, you should learn of.
I shall learn of things.
You should shall.
I should shall. Because I don't hear his accent in the voice.
Because epic voice is his accent. Okay. Jeez.
Wow, tone it down on the attitude, Justin. No, but yes, Phil. We're unsure if Jack will make it for explainable circumstances. They are well, I mean, Justin knows more than I do, but we wanted for him to be here just to discuss some things. If you feel like discussing things like they've been pretty much like a not Twitter war. I wanted to say something else, kind of like a back and forth with people on Twitter about single sex prisons and other things, whatever they particularly want to
Sex
discuss.
prisons and other things.
Well, it wasn't just that particular topic. I was trying to refer to, you know what? Never mind. We'll see if Jack makes it. If not, it's okay. They're always going to be welcome back to come on anyway. Jack's cool people.
Sex prisons.
Sex prisons. Sounds like a fun time. Anyway, what can we discuss? What have you been up to?
Struggling with working from home. That's been the gist of my existence the past couple weeks. So
I recall
right
that.
before the new year, we got an email at work from our director that my whole kind of department is under directive to work from home as much as possible. If we go into the office for anything, we have to limit our time and movement and all that stuff as much as possible, because the COVID positivity rate is like 10% of everybody that's tested, and it's not like only symptomatic people are being tested. It's like they're just doing wide scale testing. So it's really high, and it's just difficult for me to stay productive and focused while working from home. And it was supposed to be for 2 weeks, and now it's through the end of January, and all of my projects at work are being pushed into the second week of February. So it's less than ideal. in terms of me getting done the things that I need to get done.
Yeah. No, like quite a few of my coworkers were out for a couple weeks because they tested positive. Testing results that once were as a quick of a turnaround as 24 hours is taking up to upwards of 4 to 5 days. It's pretty bad. Like testing drive-throughs, at least where I work, or the hospitals within my organization that I work for, are like wrapped around buildings almost as far as the freeway. Lines are pretty bad. So there's that. But besides that, everything's good. How cold is it
Yeah.
there?
It is 33 degrees
That is
Fahrenheit. So right
insane.
now
Why do you live
it's
there?
not too bad. It was like 18, and then there was a time a couple days ago where it was like a 0 degrees with the wind chill, which is really cold.
Ugh.
And I'm going out of town this weekend. I'm going to northern Michigan where it's way colder. So it's gonna be great.
Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great decisions. Take a man trip. Woo!
Yeah. It's the kind of trip where like you take extra windshield wipers and fluid and stuff with you because you never know what's gonna happen.
Are you going hunting? Have you ever
No,
hunted before? No.
I
Okay.
don't hunt.
Okay.
Which
Well.
which is interesting because a lot of the people I work with do hunt,
Yeah.
and we have to plan our big projects around hunting season. We just expect most of the uh the labor workers to not be there.
Because a lot of your workforce take part in hunting. Wow.
Yeah, like a huge portion of it, enough to
Okay.
where we just don't bother scheduling anything to get done.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
interesting. I mean, it's a cultural thing. It's just what people do.
East of LA. Are you in Cali, Phil? I didn't know you were in Cali. Maybe I just feel like you've been road tripping with your wifey. That's cool though. That's cool.
East
But
of
yeah,
LA.
east of LA.
Could be east of Louisiana. I don't know why anybody would ever say it like that, but you
Well,
know.
exactly. Because that's fucking confusing as shit. Um, okay, fair enough. Uh, well, I hope you have fun this weekend. Freezing your balls off.
Thanks.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
a little bit.
A little
So
bit. Okay.
what's been in the news? What's been in the Jena sphere?
I mean, apart from just, trying new things, is having
Those
branching out
in
a little bit, have
Riverside.
Phil's in Riverside. Oh, Phil, we gotta have brunch. Let's have brunch. Maybe not. I don't know. COVID. We'll talk. We'll talk. Um, no. Uh, I'm back in school, so that's good. Taking just having to reprioritize that and just placing my focus on content that I want to be more productive in and do. So that's cool. One point in time, I wanted to open my own channel, but just given the minimal flexibility I have, especially with, trying to finish school too. Who knows? Maybe in the future I will, but it's just not a possibility. I'd rather just stick with if growing, community, growing the content or broadening our content here and elsewhere, that seems the most logical. So, just putting my little toes in separate things. I know
Yeah,
we had a
it,
discussion today. Yeah.
yeah, let's say it's easy to get stretched like too thin, right? And you
Mhm.
always feel like, oh, I can be more productive. There's more things that I can do,
Yeah.
or I need to be more involved.
Yeah.
Um, and and sometimes it starts off really well and it goes in the right direction for a while, but then you get burnt out on it and disappear from the face of the earth for 3 months.
Are you I feel like you pretty much just illustrated me like the first half of last year. First and middle
Yeah.
half.
Well, there's definitely been times where, and we've talked about this, where like this show was pretty much the only like anything dealing with content or activism or
Yeah.
like science communication or anything that I've taken part of for like weeks or months at a time. And that's only like really half-assing it and not like really being totally present for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's hard. It's hard when, you have a job and in my case, like a family and two small kids and always trying to always feeling like you want to do more and you could do more, but just not having the energy or the focus and the willpower to do it effectively while,
Yeah.
minimizing, sacrificing the time and efforts that you put into other things that you have to get done, like work and family, or in your case, school. Um, so it's hard to, you know, keep putting yourself out there without, falling behind everywhere else.
No, that's true. It's difficult. And I experienced that too. Even though I don't have like a family or anything, but I still struggle just saw little bits of me all over the place and then struggled to keep up with actually having more, off-screen personal conversations or catching up with friends or even talking to you on a regular. So that is something I had to do a major reflection on and refocus. I think I did say this. I made a official, unofficial resolution where I would strive to be better at following up and communicating with people that didn't prolong a response from me for more than a week, 'cause there would be time.
I will leave you on read for no more than a week. That
Yes.
is my promise.
But but in all fairness, that's where I saw where I would leave off on conversations with people. I'm like, "God damn, this is pretty bad." Like, and I mean, I had my moments to where I had to withdraw because of, mental health and stuff like that. I just couldn't take my own bullshit sometimes and just had to just disappear. That was just my way of handling shit, right? But there were times where I just, miss out on following up with folks, and that's sad. And I want to try. I'm slowly getting better, maybe, but I mean, refocusing on really organizing what I have to do is the main thing. Look who showed. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Were
I'm
you were
good.
you building your headphones in your shed? Is that why you're late?
I went out drinking and then fell asleep, and now I'm awake again.
I I saw
Because
your
Awesome.
you're
Twitter
around.
post earlier that you were drinking. I'm like, well, there goes Jack.
No, I made it. I'm just a bit late.
It's
No,
all
no, you're
good.
cool, bro. You're cool. See, you
Um,
got fans. They were fine. They were fine.
um, I was just gonna say, Jenna, that you do have some family obligations, right? And then you do have some family members going through health and medical issues, and then you still like live with your sister at least. So there's always like something going on to some degree where you can't. It's not like a free for all where you can just 100%
Yeah.
allocate your time to the things that you want to do. That's kind of what um, that's kind of like the most limiting thing about having a family is that you just really don't have control over your schedule.
You really don't. We really don't.
Jack, what's going on?
What
Are you
is going on?
hungover? Are you
Yes, very,
okay?
very.
Cool. Good.
This
Good
is
job.
great for me. It's very good. Yeah, this is the last day that I was allowed to do stuff that's unhealthy, according to my surgeon. I don't know how accurate that is to how that's supposed to work. But he said stop doing things that are unhealthy a month before you get surgery. It was a month and a day before, so I got very drunk.
I mean, that works. That works.
It's
I would
not.
probably do the same. La Sarah.
Mm.
Eddie. Good to see you. Hi, Ollie man. Well, I don't know what Jack. not Jack. I don't know what Justin. A lot of J names on the show today. Hello. I don't know what Justin prepped you for, or wanted to actually have you discuss, or what you wanted to discuss, or what you wanted.
You're only allowed to say the things that was on the flashcards.
Oh, right,
and
right, exactly.
The questions that we prepared.
Yeah, it was just lots of compliments for Justin. Just like a list of exact ones I had to give.
Knew it. I fucking knew it. You narcissist. No, it's kidding. It probably would have been on there though, for real. I mean, that's cool. No, we were just kind of shooting the shit, catching up, talking about general things. Really?
Jack, are you related to Peter Parker?
No, I'm not, unfortunately, although I did cringely change my last name because of Peter Parker. Like, that's fully where my last name came from. So
yes, he's related to Peter Parker. Yes.
So like kind of, I really did not think about anything when I changed my name. I literally was like, Jack will do as a first name, I guess. That's generic. That'll work. And then I was like, I need a last name. I was like, just thought of some characters, picked one, and then literally like immediately ordered my name change forms.
I like it. I would have just, chose a basic American baby book, flip through a page and be like, Abigail. Cool. Got it. That's my name.
Yeah. Yeah, the most deliberating anyone did was over my middle name. I let a friend pick my middle name.
Do you have a middle name?
Yeah, my middle name's Violet. I wanted like a feminine middle name to balance stuff out, but I was like, I don't know what I want to pick, so I just let my friends deliberate over it for like an hour and then ordered my forms.
You think Jack and Parker are so masculine that you needed a balancing force?
Yeah, I did.
That's cool. I like it. Jack Violet Parker.
Yeah, I considered Jackson for a while, and then I was like, I will literally never use the long form of that. What is the point?
Wait, did you say Violent Parker or
Violet?
Violet? Oh,
like I said flower. Violet. Did it sound like I said violent? It sounded like I said violent, didn't it? Whatever.
It would have been a sick name. That would have been a good name.
I have a flamethrower in my hand. Don't fuck with me. Don't ask me why I have this in my hand. I was lighting candles. Anyways, spider person.
Is your pronoun spider person?
Thank you, Eddie. Thought you said Rylan.
Jack, do you want to talk about your latest foray into the Twitter sphere?
Ooh.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Jena was like, hey, have Jack talk about what he's had going on his Twitter. I'm like, I'm not going to force somebody to talk about being harassed.
No, I think, in fairness.
You mentioned it. I didn't realize he was being harassed. Give me a fucking break.
Yeah, I mean, like,
look, Jack and Twitter, Jack plus Twitter equals harassment. That's just how it works.
It does. And that part of it is on me. Like, I do want to recognize that, like, obviously, while I did not deserve to get harassed, I was aware that it would happen. I wasn't aware the amount it would happen by far. But, like, I was expecting to get a cheeky bit of harassment. Because, like, that's what happens whenever, like, a huge TERF hashtag shows up. Like, they were doing the, like, keep prisons single sex hashtag. And I was like, I'm going to post in it. Because whenever one of these hashtags comes up, someone should post in it. Did. And figured I would get maybe, like, 20 or 30 people harassing me. 1,000 is a bit more than that. 1,000 is a bit of a higher number than that. But it wasn't like, unbearable. I also refused to lock my account despite many of my friends telling me to lock it.
I mean, that was wise. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about locking it and just like waiting it out until all of them got bored, but also that would have defeated the exact point of me posting in it, which was to give accurate information in a hashtag full of like weird transphobes. So I was like, well, I guess they win if I lock my account, so I didn't. But a little bit cringe. Do
you wanna do you wanna like give a quick description of what the topic was that kind of launched this episode?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so like there's a thing going on in the UK right now where there's a bill called the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, which literally is just a bill like full of random bullshit. Like it is a mishmash of like everything. Like I know in the US they do bills sometimes where there will be a bill about like one major thing and people will tack on lots of other crap like onto it to try and get it through. So they'll be like, this is a bill about like building a new bridge, and then inside of the bill is something that changes like the law on like it could be a similar thing, right? Like where prisoners are housed, like hidden in it. The police crime sentencing and courts bill is just all that, because like it has all of those things listed in it, and it is like a ton of stuff to do with different sentences for different crimes, adds a bunch of crimes. There's a ton of stuff that like targets Romani travelers in the UK, so like changes laws like that. And there's a bunch of stuff they were trying to add as amendments about trans people. So they tried to do an amendment called amendment, I think it's 214, and amendment 97ZA was going to be in there. Both of them got rejected in the end, but they were ones that would have made it so that trans women had to be housed in men's prisons and trans men had to be housed in men's prisons. Not that, as far as I'm aware, any trans men are housed in men's prisons currently in the UK at all, but like 10% of the trans women in the UK are housed in women's prisons. So I posted a bunch of stuff in there basically giving information about that, and then got extremely harassed already. But one of the things I posted in there was that like if I were to go to prison, not if it would happen today, I guess, but like if I were to go to prison in a few months, I would probably want to be housed in the men's estate because it's actually safer, which is like counterintuitive because everyone thinks that men's prisons are like dozens of times more dangerous. And then like I think I got quote tweeted like 400 times on that tweet alone, with people like harassing me, sending me like death threats. I found that you can get messages through GoFundMe, and I found that out because I got a bunch of death threats through GoFundMe. Didn't know that was possible.
There's not a paywall for that?
Well,
like
no, there is not.
A 50-cent tip jar?
There is
you can't
not
at
a
least
paywall.
block messages either
Nope.
when you set that up?
Nope.
Well,
You
that's some
cannot,
shit.
but GoFundMe will, when they send you the message, say, we haven't checked this message, so if it's a death threat, let us know. Which is
Wow.
nice.
Thanks, GoFundMe.
Thanks.
I reported like a shit ton of those messages from a lot of those threads, and nothing got done to any one of them. Not one thing.
Oh, for sure.
That's
Yeah,
some
of course.
shit.
Like I reported maybe like a couple dozen, and then just did not bother anymore. And of the couple dozen I reported, I think like 3 of them actually got like deleted. Like some of them were like really graphic, like rape descriptions, and like a couple of those got removed. But like most of them were deemed fine, I guess. Because to be fair, like a lot of it is the sheer volume of it, right? Like not even just the individual messages, but just the sheer volume of them. Like someone sending me a really graphic rape description and saying like, this would happen to you, and here I'm going to graphically describe what I think would happen to you. It's not technically a threat in the sense that they're saying, this is what I imagine would happen to you. I am not saying it should happen to you. I'm just saying, here, imagine it. Like, and that's horrific, but it doesn't technically break Twitter's rules.
Cool. Got it.
So that the framing of that is so strange, right? Because you pushed back and said, hey, you know, you're having like this weird fantasy of me being harmed, right? And the pushback was like, no, we're just stating facts. But then it's like, yeah, but you're acting as if you want this to happen to me, or it should happen to me because I made the wrong decision that you don't approve of, or I'm in this situation that you don't approve of, like against my will. Like I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to have to choose between the you know, the lesser of two evils of prison and the, you know, assess the risk of being like sexually assaulted or abused in prison. And you're just saying, yeah, just go to the easier one, you know, that'd be better for you. And if you choose the other one, it's your fault that it happens.
Yeah, I think most of them just don't know how prison works, like, to be honest, or like they just have no awareness. I mean, granted, like a lot of my awareness of prisons is from people I know in the US who've been to prison, but I know people in the UK who've been to prison, including men in the UK who've been to prison, including trans men and trans women in the UK who've been to prison. So like I am aware, and I also happen to know, apparently none of them do, but that people are housed differently depending on like the level of their crime, right? How violent they're considered in the UK. So all these people who are like, oh, like if you went to a men's prison, you'd be with all these hardened criminals and you'd be dead in like 10 minutes via being raped.
It was basically like you're just walking through the door, getting raped and murdered, like at the same time.
That's what they're imagining, right? And it's like
on the bus, pretty much.
Like there are different prisons for people who've done different levels of crime. I don't expect to go to prison for murdering someone. I expect if I were to go to prison, it would be for something like brothel keeping laws that I would be in breach of in the UK, right? Which is a non-violent crime. I would be housed with people who are all there for like non-violent, low-level crimes. So like if I were housed in a prison cell with a bunkmate, my bunkmate is way more likely to be there for tax fraud than like violent murder. So in terms of my risk, it's very different than like if I were in like the highest security one. I don't know, like there's this imagining that there's like no context in which anyone might make like specific choices. They don't get how any of it works, how men's prisons are in general, because I think for a lot of them, it's not just a me thing. Like it's not just like transphobic harassment or like misogynistic harassment by people perceiving me as a woman. It's also like specifically harassment based on like, they like the idea that a lot of rape is happening in men's prisons because they see it as part of the punishment. Like they essentialize male violence. They think that men are like inherently violent and that a specific type of man is especially so. And then they are like the idea that those men are experiencing that in prison. Like it's like part of their like fantasy about prisons, I guess, because all of them seemingly are pretty pro prison. Like I haven't seen any of these TERFs being like prisons are bad. They're all like prisons are great and this one's bad, this one's worse. And then we have the women's prison for the criminals that we are less mad at, and we have the men's prison, which is worse, for the criminals we're more mad at.
Yeah, and another component of that conversation, and we had talked about it for a moment. It's the same argument that comes up about trans people in sports. It's, oh, they should just have their own league, right? They should just have their own. They should just have their own prison. Let's just build prisons overnight to house all the trans people, and that way they'll be safe, and imprisoned, however that works.
Yeah,
But it's
there's
like
only a
this
couple hundred of us.
this fantasy that they can just like, magically create this perfect environment just because you don't perfectly fit in to where they think you should be. And it's the exact same argument in sport. It's like, oh well, it's unfair, so we should just make a whole new league or a whole new division. And what that equates to in real life, and when you try to put it in practice, is you're just going to get thrown in wherever they want to throw you anyway, because it's just not financially viable.
Yeah. I mean, they like work it out case by case in the UK as it currently is, which means that 90% of trans women are in men's prisons in the first place. It's only like 10% who are in women's. Some of that is, I want to note, like, it's not all that all trans women are asking to be in women's prisons and being refused. Like, there are a significant portion of trans women who ask to stay in the men's estate. Some of them because it like is safer there. Again, like, people imagine that the safety you have in prison is like full stop the same in all circumstances. It's not. For a small subset of trans women, it might be safer to stay in the men's estate, especially like certain trans women who are like super early in transition, who, if they were to move to a women's prison, because there are less of them, because there are less women in prison in the UK, if they were to move to a women's prison, they'd be way further away from their support network and family. So they might even be trading like that the men's prison is more dangerous for them in terms of being assaulted, maybe, for the fact that they're therefore closer to their family and people who can help them if they are assaulted. Even if the women's prison is slightly less dangerous, there's still quite a significant risk of assault in those prisons, because if you're trans, you still have to contend with guards no matter where you're going, obviously. And they're like one of the main risks to you when you're in prison. I mean, they're the main risk to everyone. Like when people talk about sexual assault in prisons, they talk about like the rate in men's prisons as like this, like super horrifying thing, right? It's like 6% or something from most of what I've looked at, which is a horrifying rate of sexual assault. But like that is 6% if we're accounting for like other prisoners. Like as far as how I would define sexual assault, there is 100% sexual assault rate in women's and men's prisons, because you have to be strip and cavity searched when you join the prison, like when you arrive there. And I personally consider that sexual assault. No one wants that search to be happening. No one's consenting to that outside of the fact they have to because they're in prison. So as far as I'm concerned, you've got 100% rate no matter what prison you're going to. But again, none of them consider that to be assault. They're like, oh, that's just part of going to prison.
Yeah,
That's
that
fine.
definitely lends to creating a culture where assault is more acceptable when you start off the entrance that way.
Yep.
Just a huge asymmetric power dynamic. I don't know if we want to get hung up on that forever, but there is one other thing that I want to talk about, and it's been like a really prominent topic with us and with other people on the ACD server recently, is that how do we communicate effectively ideas that we're so adamant about, right? So in particular, this is ethical veganism. And we have a few people now that I didn't really know that are just feel so strongly about it. They literally cannot help themselves but to kind of just make the biggest deal out of it at every chance possible, right? And I didn't even know that you're also a vegan and have some of the same ideas. You're just not like super all in my face about it. So um, I guess the question would be, how come you're not more adamant about it? And oh, please don't. How come you're not more adamant about it? And would you say that the way that you talk about it is more effective than the way that we typically come across it in a way that people would label as like a militant vegan, or basically what Rollin is describing, the someone that just tells you about it every 5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I think the tactics kind of essentially work together. Like, regardless of whether or not I agree with the people who are super militant and really like loud about it, and I certainly disagree with a lot of the arguments that go around, like people who will compare animals to like specific groups of people, I find pretty abhorrent as a comparison. Like stuff like that. Even though those people, I'm not like allied with them and planning it this way. I think that a lot of the time they bring up the conversation of veganism, and then people ultimately find out that I'm vegan and talk to me about it, and I end up like unintentionally convincing them to go vegan or to make more vegan choices. A lot of the time it doesn't come up, and I avoid it coming up, not really from like an activism perspective, but mostly just out of awkwardness and me not wanting to have a fight all the time. Like, if every time I mention being vegan, it is immediately a fight. Anytime I join a workplace, I avoid people finding out for as long as possible. And once they do, I categorically refuse to discuss it with anyone, because it just becomes all anyone will talk to you about. It becomes exhausting and people get super defensive. Like, if someone offers me food, like, I don't know, like chicken strips or something, because I've mentioned being hungry, and I say, no, thanks, I'm vegan, so I can't, then immediately, like, they take that as an attack. Like, they start defending why they eat meat. And I'm like,
they automatically become
anything.
almost offended.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't question you. It's fine. I'm just telling you why I'm not taking it. So I don't say that. I just say like, no, thanks, I'm good. And I say that to basically everything.
Why do you think there's such a visceral response to that? Do you think it's because they've been attacked before by people that are more adamant about it?
Maybe partially, but I think most of the time it's just because like anyone making an ethical choice does imply that they think that the other choice is unethical, right? Like, it is true.
You're encroaching on their lifestyle or their moral, positions.
I guess. Like, I wouldn't be vegan if I didn't think it was better to be vegan, right? Like, I think it would be disingenuous for me to pretend otherwise. I have been vegan for like 7 years now. It's not easy. Like, it's not super easy to be vegan. It is something I have to make active efforts at. It is awkward in social settings. It like is extra work that I have to do that I otherwise wouldn't. Obviously, I do it for a reason, right? So when I say that I'm vegan, they realize like, you think ethically people should be, and therefore are judging me for not being. And it's like, well, it's more complicated than that. I think ethically I should be. I don't know everyone's circumstances, so I'm not going to apply that to other people. Like, I'm not out here assuming that everyone is in my exact circumstances and should do the same things I do. And I think that would be very arrogant if I did. I guess maybe they act like that, so they assume that anyone else who makes a moral decision is applying it to everyone else.
Wow. I joined a group for vegans just to find friends, but they were crazy vegans and offered to give me the right film to convince my mom to turn vegan. Interesting.
Depending on how many years ago that was, maybe that was me. I used to do some batshit stuff to try and convince people. I literally like, people now often get surprised when I mention being vegan because like they know me for a long time without it coming up. But like,
you're a terrible activist.
But when I was like 16, I was like so overt about it. Like, I was in one of these groups. It's called Anonymous for the Voiceless. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's like a vegan group. And we would all wear masks holding up like laptops with slaughterhouse footage. So I would take my laptop into town with this group of people. I would have my laptop out. I would download before I went slaughterhouse footage, and I would play it in the high street full volume, just holding up a laptop that had slaughterhouse footage on it with a mask on. We nearly got arrested a couple of times. Police showed up to more than one demonstration. The one time the police showed up and were pretty adamant about arresting some of us. They did arrest one of the people there. I didn't get arrested purely because I was like, I'm a child. Please do not arrest me. I am an infant. I do not want to go anywhere. I'm 16 years old. Please let me go.
I don't know any better. They made me do it.
Exactly. And then they let me leave. But I don't think I would have gone away with that even if I was a couple of years older. Like I was like notably risking arrest when I did that. And we did it a lot. And like we would have people in like a cube showing the slaughterhouse footage and the other half of the people talking to everyone. And I did that too. Like sometimes I would be holding up footage. I did this like every week for many weeks. Sometimes I would be the one talking to people. So while everyone else stopped to watch the footage, I'd be like, and how does that make you feel? What do you think about this footage you're viewing right now?
God damn.
Wow,
like
you are
literally like I was
Wow.
all in. Like I would be like, so how do you feel about that? And I'm like, interesting. You feel bad watching this. So what do you think we could what do you theoretically imagine we could do about this? I'm sure you imagine we could do something, right? Like literally like the most obnoxious bullshit ever. And I used to do that every week. Like that was my weekend.
Holy shit, Jack.
Yeah. That was my weekend.
Roland's other point, that might happen to a lesser degree to people who don't drink. That's actually that's a good point, I think, because drinking is so ingrained in our culture, especially in certain communities, maybe not all of them, and to a lesser extent now, but back when I was 21, 22, when I was in the military, like if you don't drink, you are like a social outcast. And how do we hang out with you? How can we be friends with you if you don't go have a drink with us? We're not in the same social circle.
Yeah.
So you kind of get like shamed into it. I started drinking at 16, so I wasn't, that didn't bother me, but
you were ahead of the game. Gotcha.
But I can see how that could be a problem, especially if people are doing it for like moral or religious or just for health reasons, and they're just like being bombarded constantly with doing this thing that it clearly has a negative health impact, but it might have some social benefits, I guess.
Yeah. I have a two-part question for you, Jack. One, a more obvious one. What are your reasons for turning vegan? And two, when did you
transform into a vegan?
What convinced you? What is the slaughterhouse videos? No, it's good.
Probably. Bleeding heart Jack.
Oh, Jesus. And two, would you say transitioning to veganism is more of a privileged stance? And I'll explain after you.
Yeah, Jack is super privileged. the hallmark of privilege.
I think that obviously like privilege definitely does come into it, right? Like there is like some people can be vegan, some people can't, and obviously there's privilege tied to that. I went vegan when I was 16. I just turned 16, I think. I decided to go vegan.
That was your birthday gift.
When I was 15, almost 16, literally just because a girl I knew at the time who I wanted to date was vegan, and she was very militant about it. And I was like, she won't date me unless I go vegan.
The things we do for love.
Yeah, she ultimately sucked also, but I was blinded at the time because I was 15. Well, I was 15. I made bad choices. But like,
it was a waste of a perfectly good carnivore.
I know. So she talked a lot about it, and to be fair, like she did make good arguments also, but ultimately like I was only really interested in doing it so she'd like me, and then I ended up in a psychiatric unit, unrelated, but when I went to the psych unit I was like, well, they have to provide all my meals and I don't have to cook anything, so I guess I'll go vegan while I'm here. So I did, and
that's fair.
Was vegan while I was at the psych unit after my first couple of days, and then when I came out continued. And so I went vegan pretty suddenly. I was vegetarian before that for a couple of weeks, and then vegan after that point onwards. And in terms of like why I did it after that, like why I continued, because obviously like the stuff with this girl did not work out. She ultimately turned out to suck.
Yeah.
I stayed vegan for the ethical reasons, but I actually think it's easier to absorb those ethical reasons if you're already doing it. Because I agreed 100% with veganism for maybe 6 months before I went vegan, but I couldn't like resolve the cognitive dissonance because I was still sitting down in the evening and my mum would provide me with food. It would have meat on my plate and I would be sitting there thinking like, I think this is morally wrong what I'm doing right now, and I'm still doing it. And like when you are in the middle of doing something, especially when like it literally is the killing that I thought was wrong. Like I'm not just vegan for like environmental reasons. I also am for like animal rights and animal welfare reasons. Like I literally was like, I think killing of this thing is wrong. Continues eating steak. Like you can't as you're doing that admit that like you feel that way morally, because like if I did so, I would feel an immense immediate amount of guilt. Like it would be really extreme. So it was only after I actually stopped eating meat in the first place that I was able to be like, okay, I think the thing is wrong. Like I'm not currently doing it. I wouldn't be like destroyed by the guilt if I admitted this to myself. So I can now admit it. And then I did not eat meat after that point. And I went completely vegan, didn't consume any other products. But like I do think, although like given my personal circumstances, it might seem odd to claim, I would say that it's similar to how like with any kind of privilege, it's like lateral, right? It's with people who are of a comparable stance to you in like every other way, right? It's how you work out your privilege. So like when I was homeless, there were other people who were homeless, for example, who would push back on the idea of white privilege, right? Like as a concept, they would be like, well, I'm not privileged, I'm homeless. And it's like, you are privileged compared to other people in our situation. Like you are homeless and white, and I promise you, you will have more opportunities to get out of homelessness than someone who is black here does. Or like, in terms of like xenophobia in the UK, someone who's Polish, right? Like people hate Polish people in the UK. Someone who's Polish and homeless, way less likely to get money than someone who is born in Britain. Someone who is black and homeless is going to get way less opportunities to get out of that than someone who's white and homeless. Like that's how privilege functions. And it's the same thing with like the veganism for me. For me, mostly that is going to be like geographical. So like for someone who's in a comparative situation to mine, but lives somewhere where they're in a food desert and they don't have access to the kind of food I have access to. Like I am privileged compared to that person in terms of my access to food, and that privilege allows me to be vegan. I think it gets complicated when we're talking about geography, because someone might live in a place where we would say that person has less relative privilege, like someone who lives in like a village that doesn't even have access to like lots of medical care, for example, might still be super capable of being vegan depending on where they are. So it's going to depend a lot on circumstances.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because I've listened to, I've never participated in conversations with vegans because I can't. I don't even know where to start. But I'm glad you referenced that, because I recall listening to something on the PSF channel where they were talking about veganism and some other topic matter I can't recall right now, but just the fact that it was this person's adamant drive, typical of everyone else, but they had a strange, intimate reason as to why everyone in the world needs to be this way, needs to be vegan, in order to, help with the world growth and
there's like a whole list of problems with the world that you will fix immediately
by being vegan. And I'm like, okay, cool. But it occurred to me that there are certain, like you said, geographically, there are certain regions of places where people don't have that access or resources to those type of foods that can help them transition to that. So how do you supplement those groups? How do you supplement those geographical areas in order to effectively put in place the change that you want to see, right? You have to do this step first instead of just having this grand idea of what you want. Like, no, bro, it first recognize that you have a privileged opportunity to make that change for yourself, but others do not.
Yeah, this might be a bit of a hot take. I think that
like
people's position on that is like mostly just like a colonialist bullshit attitude. Like I legitimately think that that's what it is. It's like a type of colonialist attitude where they're imagining like civilizing another group of people by turning them vegan. And frankly, like it's none of other people's business what people in other countries in totally different circumstances are doing, because like you have no fucking clue about it. Like it's the same with any kind of politics I do. I have lots of opinions on American politics. I might even suggest things about it, but ultimately almost all of the work I do is in the UK, right? Because that's the country I live in. I don't have any right to suggest that someone who is like, I don't know, like an indigenous person living in Alaska go vegan, because like I don't know a shit about their living circumstances, right? Like the things I learn about it are not things that I have learned like personally, like they're not things that I have experienced myself. I can learn things and like be more understanding, right? Like I can over time develop more of an understanding about what's going on for them. But why would I put all of my work into politically organizing in a way that affects a group of people I do not belong to and that I do not understand the material circumstances of as well as they would understand their own? Like, I mean, people who are like big on like global veganism as a concept are being fucking stupid. Like, handle it where you live. Like there are vegans who live in other places who can do that. Like you see lots of vegans talking about India, for example, because there are so many like religious vegetarians there. So it's like a really useful to use for as an example when people are talking about how when they're talking about being vegan as like this like Western ideal or whatever. And they'll be like, well, in India, they're doing this thing and this thing and this thing. And then they talk about how like there's no excuse not to be vegan if you live in India because there are so many people who are vegetarian already. So it's so easy and all of this stuff. And it's like, you don't know shit about living in India, so shut the fuck up. Like there are plenty of vegans in India. Let the vegans in India talk about that. Like as if a vegan from India can't do vegan activism there. If you think that there should be global vegan activism, then maybe we should like not act like deranged white saviors about it and let the vegans who live in those countries do the thing.
He
like,
said it.
But there are a bunch of vegans in India. Why aren't they why aren't you leaving them alone to do their own activism?
They're the wrong kind of vegan, Jack.
Yeah, that reminds me of the people here in the U.S. that are like, well, I guess it's bad here, but like, look at the Middle East. Look how bad it is over there. It's like, just let's try to like clean up our own backyard a little bit, at least.
Thank
a little
you. Like, I'm all about helping other countries that are not as privileged as we are here, but we got homeless kids too. We got people, lacking the support of even feeding themselves almost on a daily here too. We got that shit. Can we fix here first? I'm just saying. That's my rant.
Well, it's not fix here first, right? It's more of a let's focus on fixing us before we start judging other people and inventing solutions to their problems that we don't know anything about.
Yes, you put it more eloquently than I did. Thank you.
And like you can support people who are in those places doing the work themselves. Like that's part of what bugs me so much. Isn't just even the idea of helping people in another country, but it's that like the idea is that they're imagining they're the ones doing the work. Right? It's like, well, no, ultimately people who live in a place are the ones doing the work for themselves. Like you can support.
Yeah, but I donate to the Red Cross, so I'm doing something.
Like you support the people themselves in helping themselves, right? Like why would you act like you have to be the one who does all of the like saving? I guess because it's fun to imagine yourself as some kind of savior, right? Like that's what most people are thinking.
Yeah. Is it not?
Yeah, but it's like I get frustrated like the other way around, right? Like if I'm talking about like I don't know,
be a
like,
fucking superhero.
I don't want random cishet people to be like getting in my face when I'm doing like organizing with my community around queer rights.
I'm here for you, Jack. I'm gonna tell them what you want, okay?
But like,
I am here for you. I'm doing this for you. I'm gonna tell you which prison is right for you, okay?
That's where you gonna go.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people should maybe make more considerations about this stuff, about how they feel with their own topics that they do work on, and how they would want people to react around those, and then apply that to other people. Because like I don't see people doing that. Like when I went vegan, I ultimately, like the reason I have stayed vegan this long, I have like a bunch of reasons for, from environmentalism to animal rights reasons, to it tying into anti-capitalist ideas that I have. And all of those beliefs are important to me. I'm not going to pretend that I don't believe these things. I don't want to have arguments about it all the time, but I'm not going to pretend that it isn't something I believe. And I like don't seek to apply that to anyone who isn't in similar circumstances to me, I guess. Like, even if I were wanting to convince someone to go vegan, it would be after I know their circumstances and if that's something that's possible for them. When I advocate for people going vegan, or usually for reducing meat consumption, it is like people who are in circumstances where they can do that. I'm not going to make sweeping generalizations about everyone doing so. Like, I did my best to stay vegan while I was literally homeless, and I wouldn't advocate that for homeless people. It was fucking miserable. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect someone to do that in those circumstances, even though I tried to. I was vegetarian for a lot of the time that I was homeless instead of being vegan. There was like a couple of months or so, I guess, where I was vegetarian rather than vegan. So in my 7 years, this is when I was 17. So like, I guess minus 2 months out of that, where I was vegetarian for a while I was homeless. But like, and the rest of the time I was homeless, I was like pretty staunchly vegan, even when that meant not eating for a couple of days. I don't think that other people should have to make those kinds of choices. I did because of how strongly I feel, but I would never apply that to other people. And that's why I don't really get this assumption that like how someone feels must be applied to everyone else. Like my decision making, I don't think needs to be made by everyone.
Right. Because you kind of bridge that idea of, you know, everyone should be of this one religion, everyone should be of this mindset, everyone should be more left thinking or more right thinking or whatever. It's like you are imposing you're imposing your own self, whatever reflection of yourself, and you're imposing that on other people. Like, you know, let people do what they want to their bodies and their own lives, right? That's it. And I would never, I mean, we have friends. I know for sure Cynthia McDonald, she's a vegan. She rarely wants to talk about that, but she does mention it in conversation occasionally, but that is her personal choice for, you know, doing so. And that's fine. That's that's a reflection of herself and what I self-identifies as why she is a vegan or does what she does. And you over time built better reasons, I would say, for yourself as to why you became vegan and then remained so. So, I mean, hey, more power to you.
Yeah, I see it kind of like the same way we navigate our social atmospheres as atheists, and it's like, you know, for a lot of us, if you're asked about it, you'll be open about it, but you don't want to talk about it at every conversation or every time it's brought up. It's just going to cause so much friction that you'll never have any friends.
Yeah.
You know, so you just avoid it because these are controversial topics that people are very emotional about, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a time and place to have the debate and have the conversation and have like a deep dive into your beliefs and why you believe it. It's just not everywhere all the time in every context.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, it's just too much effort. And so if people don't want to talk about it, just let them not. Or if they do, then you know, I think there's value in trying to convince other people to believe what you believe if you feel like this is ethically the correct or right thing to do, right? There's value in that. But, you know, just mentioning, hey, this is what I believe and this is why, and leaving it as that and letting them follow your example of doing that for your reasons and seeing the results of that is going to be a lot more effective than just arguing with them and, you know, calling them, you know, bad names or insults or making them defensive and just rejecting the idea from the get-go.
Agree.
And in some cases, at least anyway, it would work better for me that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. A large part of it for me also isn't even just about like convincing other people. Even when I'm thinking about that, right? Like it would be ideal for me, for example, if everyone I lived with were vegan. Of the people I live with, my best friend is, and he went vegan around the same time I did. One of my other friends was vegan for a while because I convinced him to be, but ultimately didn't say so. But he eats like a lot less meat than average, I would say. Like he eats a lot of specifically vegan foods. So that is helpful to me. But his boyfriend doesn't. His boyfriend eats meat all the time and lives here. And like theoretically, I could spend time trying to convert him, right? And trying to convert my other friend back to being vegan. I could theoretically put in that time. But it isn't just like me imagining that, but also like the likelihood of that impacting me that I'm factoring in when I'm imagining like these conversion conversations. Because I think like the likelihood of me convincing one of them in particular to go vegan, so the one who hasn't been vegan before, to try and convince him, would, I think, involve like a large number of arguments about veganism in the household. And I think it would contribute to burnout, which a lot of vegans experience, which is why it's pretty common for people after like 5 or 6 years to stop being vegan.
Are you in the burnout? Are you in the burnout phase? Is that why we're safe?
Well, no, like I would be in that zone by now, I think, if I had been arguing like as militantly as I was in the beginning until now.
I see.
Like you eventually, like it's not about changing of moral convictions. Most people I talk to who have been vegan for 5 or 6 years and are in the process of giving it up, or who are thinking about that, none of them have changed what they think morally. All of them still think morally that they should be vegan. But they are exhausted at constantly arguing about veganism stuff and being like confronted about it all the time. And they're often the ones starting the arguments, right? They're exhausted by doing this kind of activism. And they just eventually go, I'm too tired. I'm too tired to do it anymore. And instead of stepping back and stopping the activism, they stop being vegan entirely because they've tied them together so much. They can't imagine being vegan without the activism to go along with it. So they just stop being vegan. I saw that when I was pretty early in my veganism, maybe a couple of years in, and realized that was what was causing people to stop, because I thought maybe people were going back on their moral convictions, which I couldn't understand, because I was like, I feel like I have looked for every excuse I could possibly find to justify eating meat to myself. Because like before that point, I like would eat meat every meal. Like I would eat meat more than anyone else I knew. I would send steak back if they didn't give it to me rare enough. Like if I felt like it was overcooked, I was obsessed with eating it. We went to Tunisia and like I ate a bunch of sheep's eyeballs and was obsessed with the idea that I could do that. Like I was eating animal products all the fucking time and I enjoyed meat a lot. And so when I gave it up, I was really frustrated, especially in the beginning, because I was like, I feel like I have this moral imperative to give this up. But I liked eating meat. Like I know a lot of vegans are like, no, I didn't really enjoy it or whatever. A lot of vegetarians are vegetarian just because they don't like the taste of meat. But like I never had that. Like I never had that. I really wanted to eat meat and I looked for excuses. Like I looked for reasons I would be able to. I watched veganism debates hoping to be convinced not to be vegan because it was annoying as shit to be vegan. Got me into like a lot of like annoying conversations and trouble with people. And also I liked meat, but I couldn't find a reason to do it. And so after like 2 years of trying to find a reason to be allowed to, I was like, I feel pretty convinced that I'm never going to find one. Like theoretically, maybe someone will convince me in future, but I don't imagine that happening. I can't see that as likely. So why are all these vegans around me like suddenly stopping being vegan after 5 years? Like what's convincing them? And I realized nothing was. Like they were just like, I'm so burnt out from arguing all the time. I give up. Like I just give up. I can't do it anymore. Pushing against the tide and I'm done. And so like part of how I talk about veganism is factoring that in. Like, sure, maybe I convince one of my housemates to go vegan. And he probably ultimately wouldn't stay vegan for that long, especially if I didn't. So maybe I convince him and he stays vegan for 6 months. But having argued with him so much in my own house where I now don't even get to just chill out and have to argue about veganism all the time, maybe that like stops me from being vegan. And so like combined,
I have a solution for you, Jack. I have a solution for your house. Just volunteer to be in charge of the groceries. And
Justin,
what?
You know that's not gonna work. Do you know how bad my ADHD is? We would just starve. We would starve in this house.
I have pills for you. Look, here, volunteer to be in charge of the groceries, and just just buy rice or whatever vegans tell us that we can live on, rice and beans. And just expect that to go over very well. And just say, here's your meals from now on, this slop, rice and beans soup.
Yep, that'll do it.
God damn it. Anyways, well, I mean, I actually appreciated this conversation because I often get turned away when, there's a conversation about veganism. I'm like, nope, bye-bye, because I know where this shit's going.
There's different ways to talk about it, right?
Right, that's why I appreciate this one.
Yeah. I've learned that recently, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up a bit, because there's the apologist version of it, right? Very, very similar to religions and religious apologists who are so convinced that they're right, that there is a moral imperative. They're required by their belief system to preach this gospel and to save you for your benefit. They're doing it for your benefit, right? Or on behalf of, whatever. But then there's people, and that's like the we're doing so much harm right now that every second it goes on, I'm failing the people or the creatures that are being harmed, right? And that's like the hardcore version of it. But then there's like okay, let's try to reduce the amount of harm. Let's try to reduce the amount of meat. Let's try to like any step in the right direction is better than nothing. So like just and pretty much most people agree that factory farming can be harmful and we don't want to like cause
Sure.
any unnecessarily like harm or torture and suffering and stuff like that. But like it's when you attack right out the gate, you just shut down any conversation whatsoever.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an effective way to communicate this idea and this goal in a way that at least puts you in the right direction and opens the door for further conversation rather than
Yes.
just creating an enemy, instantly.
Yeah. I think I'm probably just too pragmatic for like the one-on-one conversation, because anytime I have a convo with one person about veganism, all I'm thinking is if I was spending this time lobbying to change legislation, I could do literally a million times more good and reduce like animal consumption way more if I were just applying my time to that. So why aren't I? Like, I get it, especially people who aren't gonna like do any kind of political lobbying anyway, who aren't gonna do any kind of like bigger changes. Sure, like that's, I guess, better than nothing. And I'm not going to tell everyone how to spend their time. I spend my time playing video games, and that's not productive. Like, do whatever you want. But if I'm to do vegan activism, it is going to be like larger structures, like getting the government to get rid of like subsidies for meat consumption, for example, which would raise the price of meat in the UK by like double, right? That is going to lower meat consumption way, way more than me convincing as many people as I can to go vegan. It'll do like millions of times more good.
So the trick is to just jack up the price on meat.
But that's what we
Well,
do on cigarettes and alcohol and everything else that we
Well,
don't
there
want
you
people to
go.
consume.
well, I mean, it's not even to increase it, because like with alcohol and with cigarettes, it's artificially increased to try and stop people consuming it. With meat, currently the government subsidizes it. You don't pay as much for meat as it costs, right? People already talk about meat being expensive, but like you don't pay what meat costs in the US or in the UK, like, or in most of Europe. The government gives the meat industry money so that meat can be cheaper. Like, it's subsidized.
Well, then the government should stop giving those industries money.
Well, yeah, like convincing them to stop doing that means that
in
meat
general.
prices will go up, not because they're being inflated or having prices increase like you do with cigarettes, but just
Right.
because they're not being lowered on purpose. That would lower the consumption. Like, it just,
That's
I guess, just
interesting.
would.
Your take on one-on-one conversations versus lobbying, and I think that in this case, that solution is probably more effective. I always think of it in terms of somebody who's like deeply entrenched in their religious beliefs or their anti-vax beliefs or whatever it may be, and it's so hard to have large conversations about this because if you're the only one or your group is smaller than the other group, there's so much positive reinforcement of their ideas on the other side that it's hard to get through.
Yeah.
But this is a situation where lobbying can have a direct impact without needing that conversation. I mean, the public has to buy into it, or else it'd have a huge, backlash, huge problem. But you can have like wide scale effective change without necessarily like changing a belief system or minds of individuals.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I've just never really thought about it. 'Cause I don't think that we tried in the U.S. We tried to mandate vaccine that just got knocked down today by the Supreme Court. But like, there's not a lot of things that we think of that we would even like a legislative fix for without public approval. But I mean, there's probably some things. I just can't think of them off my head.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, no, that never really occurred to me either.
A lot of the time they go hand in hand, right? Like, I think with veganism, we have the benefit of there being like so many surrounding issues that people do agree with that you don't need to convince someone on veganism to advance vegan goals.
Yeah, if you just say, "Oh, do you want to reduce greenhouse emissions?" Yes. Do you want to reduce the ratio of fruits and vegetables and grain and stuff that goes towards animals that could be going to feed people? Do you want to reduce the amount of factory farming and slaughterhouses and stuff? Yeah. Oh, I want to do all the things that vegans want me to do, but I still don't want to be a vegan. But we can accomplish most of the goals together.
Yeah, exactly. Like you know what? I'll worry about trying to convince people to go vegan after we've done all that shit. Like, the structural stuff is so much more of an issue, and trying to convince someone to give up the one time that they eat meat per week is a lot easier than trying to convince someone who's eating meat every meal every day. Like, way easier. Or someone who's only consuming it once a month, right? Like, it's the more that it is lowered, the much easier it is to suggest they give it up, and also the easier it is to do. Because if you've already changed like everything around them and the surrounding structures to make it so that they're almost consuming like practically no meat, then removing the meat is super easy. And then going from a point where basically no one's consuming meat and most other types of animal products to then getting rid of the rest of the animal products also gets easier. Like, you can do that stuff without having to like convince individuals to go vegan from their current consumption suddenly. Like, would I like it if people did? Sure, but like, what's the point in trying to make that happen when there's so much other stuff we can do? Like, one of the other things that I'm really big on in the UK, which I think it is disappointing that other vegan groups aren't focused on, because I think it would be super easy to get legislation passed, is like, if you ask the average person, like, what do you think about people getting PTSD at work and not getting any compensation for that? If I were to tell you that a specific industry has an almost 100% rate of PTSD in the people who work in it after 6 months in the industry, with no compensation from their from their workplace, and zero attempts made by the workplace in the last 80 years to lower the levels of PTSD, would you think we should fix that? Most people would say that's horrendous. Yeah, we should. And I'm like, I'm talking about people who work in slaughterhouses. It's almost 100% rate of people having PTSD after working in a slaughterhouse after 6 months in one. They also have higher rates of violence in terms of later criminal violence, mostly because of desensitization to that amount of violence all in one place.
That makes sense.
It is horrific for them. Their workplaces do not offer workplace compensation because it's known that that's a risk when you take on the job. So they don't get compensation for the PTSD they live with for the rest of their lives after that point. The fact that they're more likely to commit violent crime also isn't accounted for, because who cares, apparently. And like, that's a huge issue. If, for example, workplaces were required to put things in place so people wouldn't get PTSD like that, one of the main things being that you wouldn't be doing that amount of animal slaughter, because it is like the sheer volume that's part of the problem. They'd have to hire probably 5-6 times the number of workers, right, to lower it to a degree that wasn't that traumatizing to people.
Yeah.
Then they would also have to pay those workers more money, even if they weren't raising their pay, which, like, they should be getting hazard pay for that, as far as I'm concerned, automatically, considering the circumstances. But also, if they had to have like all of their therapy covered by their employer forever for the PTSD that they're going to have as a result, that would also cost the employer money. The price of meat, again, imagine taking away government subsidies has doubled it. Now it's tripled, because that's going to cost a lot more money in meat production. But like, I can convince someone of that really easily, that we should make sure that those workers have those things. Even if they recognize that will affect like their buying habits, they'll be able to afford less meat. Most people, you can convince them of that if you talk to them about it. And like, I'm not necessarily going to say and think about how that's going to raise the price of your meat when I do it, because probably I'm not. I'll just be like, don't you think this is fucked up? And that's an easy thing to convince people of. And it means less meat consumption. And if I were to do that, that has a way bigger impact.
Right. There's multiple ways and different tactics to approach it in a way that can be convincing to some over others. So wow. Well, I know this. No, I really appreciate like actually having the opportunity to listen to a discussion of someone that's knowledgeable of this, that's not jumping down my throat for not being vegan, or me jumping down your throat for not eating meat anymore. So thank you, Jack.
You live in California. You got all kinds of other problems.
I got fire. Well, I don't have fire right now, do I? No, last I checked, no. No, I really do appreciate that, Jack, and for you being here. See, you made up the time for being late. It worked.
Yeah. You're speaking at 1.5 times speed, so we're making up for it.
I did feel really terrible when I logged onto Discord and I realized I was like, sorry, because it 100% was my fault. I just went out drinking.
It's fine.
Very drunk.
It's
Well, it's also
You're
like
cool.
the middle of the night, and I was like, I don't know if he's gonna make it, so
that
we'll see.
too. You know, I mean, I did start off and say, you know, for valid reasons, Jack may not be here. I mean, it is like fucking the middle of the fucking night. So go back to sleep or not. Do you, bro?
Before you go, what video games do you play? You said you
Oh,
play
yeah.
video games.
Ooh,
You waste time. You waste time games.
At the moment, I've been playing The Witcher 3 and the
Ooh.
first Spider-Man game on PS4. I played Miles Morales the day it came out, but I never played the game that came before it, so I've been playing that.
I got The Witcher
never
3. I
played
haven't started it yet. It's in my long list of shit that I've bought and never got to.
Oh, I'm at like
It's
600
like a
hours in it now.
really long list. Is that the only game you play?
No, but I'm at like 600 hours in it. I've played a bunch of others.
How long have you?
Yeah.
How long have you been playing?
I got it
Forever.
like a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
So I've played it like on and off. Like that, I pick it up and I play nothing but that for like several weeks, and then I.
You know, I
put it away
I
again.
can't judge because I think I have over 800 hours on my Sims 4.
Oh, see, that's just as bad.
That's almost just as bad. And I haven't touched it in a while too, but yeah, I know I have legit over 800 hours. Anyway, cool.
Mhm.
Well, by all means, like we've been wanting to have you on for a while anyway. It's just, you know, it's the middle of the fucking night. But
is there anything else that you would like to quickly cover or
yes.
say to the people?
Oh, to the
It's not it's not as effective as lobbying the UK government, but it's something.
So true. Actually, the only thing I can think of is there was a protest recently in front of the BBC against BBC coverage of trans people. And there are a bunch of, if you just search like trans BBC protest, it'll come up. A bunch of the people who were there got their speeches recorded. So if anyone hasn't had a look at them, they're pretty short. They're like a good like 10 minutes-ish each. One of them is from Sophie from Mars on YouTube. She posted her speech on there. So if you look her up, you can find it there. People should watch that. They're pretty good speeches. They're not very long. Go watch them.
Is that your best, like...
That's the best I got.
Do the thing I'm telling you to do.
Do the thing.
Good thing.
I'm convinced.
I'm going to go watch it now.
Yeah, see? Look at that. Look at that.
This episode is sponsored by this.
This action. No, appreciate you, Jack. So glad you were here. By all means, come back when you're awake during this time. But if nothing else, I don't know. Are we doing an after show? I think you're going.
I'm not. I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, I think
I got to be up early. I'm going out of town tomorrow.
Oh yeah, he's going on his white man bro trip, dad bod trip.
We're gonna do some honky shit.
Gonna do some white man shit. Hunting. Not hunting.
Probably just a lot of drinking and watching John Wick.
Drinking. Again? You did that last year.
Love that for you.
Yeah.
You did that last.
Yeah, and the year before. And the year before.
Wow. I mean, is there any other action movie you freaking can watch? Never mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jurassic Park.
John Wick it is. All right. Good night, everyone.